Good morning. This morning we continue in the Beatitudes, so Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to be reading 3 through 6. We're going to be concentrating on verse 6 this morning. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. You know, Jesus has a frame of reference for being hungry and being thirsty. Have you thought about that? Sometimes we read this as standalone, but if we just flip over one chapter previously, in Matthew chapter 4, we see the temptation of Jesus in verses 1 through 17. That's where Jesus is a newly baptized believer. He's newly baptized here. And he immediately goes into the wilderness for 40 days. He didn't eat. He didn't drink for 40 days. In fact, one of the temptations that the devil uses against him is to say, hey, you're the Son of God. Why don't you just turn these stones into bread? You don't think that was tempting for Jesus? You don't think after 10 or 20 or 30 days without any kind of food or sustenance of any kind, out in the middle of the desert, you don't think he was tempted? Oh, he was. He was very much tempted. But he responded every single time with what? Scripture. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled, or they will be satisfied. Remember how I talked about how the Beatitudes were a progression, that as you got down the list, these things caused reactions, equal and opposite reactions to each one of the others, right? And you get down that list and supposedly, hopefully, you would become more mature as you go down this list. Let's just review here just for a quick second. You're poor in spirit. You know that you are destitute. You know that you are absent of spirit without God. And that causes you to mourn. You mourn because of that. And because you're meek, you're going to hunger and thirst for righteousness. Remember, we said meek does not mean weak. Meek means the power of a bridled horse, yet they don't use it, right? The power is not utilized necessarily there. It's like the idle engine that is just running, ready to go, ready to pounce, but it's not used. That's the definition of being meek. And so we get down here to those who are hunger and thirst for righteousness. Have you ever been very hungry before? Have you ever been to a point where you might have thought you were starving? You can see I don't miss many meals. I'll be honest with you, I don't miss hardly any meals because it's not that I don't like to eat, but it's because I get hungry. Well, the other day, very rarely do I do this, but the other day I got so busy I had a later breakfast, which 9 o'clock is pretty late for breakfast for me. I'll never skip breakfast. I'll skip everything else, but I'm not going to skip breakfast. And I had a later breakfast, and I got so busy, and there was people coming in and talking and different things like that, and there was different stuff going on, and I had to walk around, do different things, and I just forgot to eat lunch. And I hardly ever do that. And by the time 4 p.m. rolled around, and by the time things toned down, I was hungry. And that pales into comparison of what Jesus was talking about here. He is talking about a new hunger, a new kind of thirst that we need to have to be righteous. We need to desire righteousness as much as we are starving and thirsting, as if we didn't have water or food for days and days and days. That's how much we need to thirst and hunger for righteousness. Now, what does that mean? Hunger and thirst for righteousness. Does that mean hunger and thirst for righteousness and hope everybody else will do it? No, that means hunger and thirst for righteousness for a right way of living. Being in a right standing with God. That's what that means. So we need to, this week, think about hungering and thirsting for righteousness. We need to think all about the things that we need to do to live in the right way and be in a right standing for God.